I've just got to talk about the press itself, because the press is now like in a fantasy world of hatred. We had Knowles on yesterday talking about NBC. I'll get back to NBC in a minute. First, our friends at Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, who's been on the show, does this great undercover work. He's basically doing the job that journalists won't do, and he's gone after the New York Times, and they keep making excuses every time he gets another one of their editors saying, yes, we hate Trump. It's like, well, he's not important. She's not important. Maggie Haberman, one of their big reporters, was saying, oh, the New York Times plays it straight down the middle. And here's the thing. If you think the New York Times plays it straight down the middle, you are what my friend John Nolte calls bubble dumb. Because these people who work for the New York Times, they are not stupid people. They're not low IQ people. But if you are just surrounded by people who agree with you all the time, you become stupid because you don't understand the bigger picture. You just think your prejudices are reality. So James O'Keefe, one of his undercover reporters, caught an editor named Desiree Shue. Is that her name? Desiree, Shue. She's a senior staff editor on the homepage of the New York Times. And she just admitted, basically, that their reporting was trying to keep Trump from getting elected. And then she says something really interesting. Listen carefully to what she says then.
One of the things that maybe journalists were thinking about is like, oh, if we write about him, about how it's like insanely crazy he is and ludicrous his policies are, then maybe people will read it and be like, oh, wow, maybe like we should vote for him. Our main stories are supposed to be objective. It's very difficult in this day and age to do that.
Why?
Because when you have something like the Charlottesville story, it's hard to portray, for instance, the president in a unbiased light when the words that are coming out of his mouth are apologetic toward white supremacists, which is what they were.
See, what's so interesting about this, she says it's hard to portray the president in an unbiased light concerning Charlottesville when the words that are coming out of his mouth are apologetic toward white supremacists, which is what they were. Now, we've already proved that they weren't. I brought in the transcript of what he said, and they keep saying, oh, he said there were great people on both sides, meaning great people among the white supremacists, but that is not what he was saying. He was saying there were great people among those people who were trying to preserve the statues and didn't want statues tore down. And since I am a person who thinks we should leave the statues up, and I'm definitely not a white supremacist of any stripe, he's obviously right. There are great people like me, like personally me. but what's fascinating about that is she doesn't even know it's a lie. She doesn't even know it's a distortion, and it's just one way of looking at it. So she can't tell that they are biased. She says she understands that it's biased to report the story so that Trump is a bad guy, but she feels that Trump is such a bad guy that how can you not be biased? So the New York Times is, a former newspaper. They have basically stopped doing journalism. But fortunately, don't worry about them because they have found something else to do with their staff. Here is, I am not making this up, an actual video the New York Times made of their staff going on to their new careers now that they have abandoned journalism.
I'm just a Broadway baby,
walking off my tired feet,
pounding 42nd Street to be a show.
No, start over.
Broadway baby, learning how to sing and dance,
waiting for that one big chance
to be in a show.
So it's like us, please, like us. This is the newspaper that is selling communism. They're doing this thing called Red Century. I've talked about it a lot because it's just insane. They're writing articles about how women had greater dreams in Red China. If you read, there's a book, a wonderful, wonderful book, if you ever want to read it, called Wild Swans, about 3 generations of women in China, and which shows you just how big their dreams were. Their dreams were, get me out of Red China. That was their big dream. And they had this other thing about how sex was better for women in the Soviet Union. I mean, it's insane, but they can sing Sondheim. I mean, they really belt out that Sondheim. So before we get back to this press conference, also, Knowles was here yesterday talking about the corruption at NBC, and it really is corrupt. I mean, it's amazing. Not just the silence, the cone of silence over the Harvey Weinstein story, shutting down SNL, pulling jokes out of Saturday Night Live, not letting the late night guys do their jokes, making Al Michaels apologize when he made a Harvey Weinstein joke during one of the football games. Didn't matter because no one's watching the football games anymore, but they made him apologize. And we talked about the fact that they're the ones who released the Access Hollywood tape, a convenient 2 days before the second presidential debate, with Trump saying all those disgusting things about the way women would let you treat them if you're a star and all this stuff. But NBC, I have to play this. This is on the Today Show, on NBC's Today Show. This is their feature on how wonderful socialism is in Denmark. I mean, this corrupt, these people who are silencing news, they're silencing news, they're silencing their entertainment, they're making sure everything is Democrat, everything is left wing, and they're selling you socialism. Listen to this.
For 40 years, Denmark is ranked as one of the happiest places on earth.
It's not a coincidence that people are happy here.
Here, no job is less than any other. Alan Christensen works just 5 hours a day, but earns the same as a school teacher.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you?
I would say maybe 8, yeah.
Ambition is not celebrated. No matter what you do, you're no better than anybody else.
And while some studies show the average American clocks in over 50 hours a week,
here on average they work 37 hours. Mothers don't have to worry so much about childcare. In Denmark, you get a year off. Paid. And there's a feeling here in Denmark that nothing too bad will ever happen to you.
The Danes trust their government.
Yeah.
They pay enormously high taxes.
Every Dane is born with the right to free health care, free education through college, comfortable retirement. They're free to pursue a job that meets their passions and their interests.
Now, I could go on for the entire show about everything that's wrong with this article, about the fact that, not celebrating ambition, what kind of society are you actually going to get, judging people by whether they're happy, which is a very weird judgment. What does that mean to be happy? You're happy when things are going well, you're unhappy when things are going badly. The other thing, I don't know if you ever saw the musical Rent. In Rent, there are these two, it's about the AIDS crisis, and there are two gay guys, and they're always singing this song about how they're going to Santa Fe, and everything's going to be great in Santa Fe. I can't even remember how the song goes, but so that is the way guys like Bernie Sanders talk about places like Denmark and Sweden. Everything is perfect there. There's this guy, Michael Booth. He's a British journalist, but he lives in Denmark, and he wrote this book about he's saying it's a nice place to live. Listen, I don't mean to insult the Danes. Hamlet was a little offbeat, but most of the Danes, I'm sure, nice people, beautiful country, all this stuff. But the quality of their free education and health care is substandard. They're way down on the educational rankings. They have the lowest life expectancy in the region, the highest rates of death from cancer. Their economic model cannot be sustained. It's all oil. It's all about oil. They get a lot of oil in Denmark and Norway, and they don't treat it like the Arabs treat it, where they just keep it in their hands, the petrodollars in the hands of a few, or the Russians, where they keep the petrodollars in the hands of a few tyrants. They do spread it around, so good for them. But ultimately, the oil when the oil prices drop, you get Venezuela. That's what they did in Venezuela. So it's like, plus, by the way, they don't let in anybody. They don't let in any immigrants. So it's just this lie, it's this lie. And I don't mean to run them down. The other thing is, what else the Denmarks can't afford to do? They can't afford to protect Denmark. The reason that Denmark isn't one of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics is because we protect these countries. They are dependent on our armed forces to protect them, and we spend the money on that. We spend the money on research and development that their healthcare people don't spend. That's why we pay so much for medicines and things like this. It's just all an illusion with cards and mirrors. Basically, Europe and Scandinavia live in our garage. They're like old people living in their kid's garage, complaining about how their kid makes their money. And it's just that I just wanted to point out that is what the press is selling you, and they're corrupt.